This is Anna Bevan-Grappeley with NCFREE, and I am joined by Representative Chris Humphrey, who's running in House District 12 for re-election. So, Representative, is there anything that you'd like to share with us before we get started?
No, I just want to thank you for having me today. The world is in a different place than it was a few years ago. So I look forward to talking about my business background and folks small business back in like 1988, right after I graduated high school. And my dad started a pawn shop down in New Bern, and so that's where my retail background began. So maybe I can touch on some of that. A lot of folks are fascinated by pawn shops, and unfortunately he passed away in 2003. Sold the business, but that gave me a good background on running a small business, and I think it's relevant to the way I conduct my business today. So talk more about that if you like.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. And you touched on this just a little bit, but I'm just going to ask straight out. Have you ever owned a business or been in a management position within a business?
Yes, I actually, my first business I started in right out of college, started an income tax franchise down in Eastern North Carolina. We had 5 locations throughout Eastern North Carolina. And after having run the tax business for about 10 years, during that time I started an insurance agency because tax business runs basically 3.5 months out of the year. So I didn't really want to go back to my dad's pawn shop business because, I had a college degree, and maybe I thought at the time I was above that for whatever reason. May not have been the best choice, but yeah, so I started my agency in 1994. So I've had a small business for many years, and yeah.
Well, thank you very much. So would you say that the current level of state and federal taxation is too high, too low, or just about right in the Goldilocks porridge analogy?
Well, I thought about this question and have pondered it from time to time. And, my initial reaction was, maybe it's about right, because, I realize that small businesses and large businesses are the backbones of our economy, especially small business. And the more you stifle and hinder small business, that can have an impact on the economy. And we're seeing that now today. This pandemic, small businesses are starting to fall by the wayside, unfortunately, because of some government decisions and regulations and executive orders that are really crippling us. And so looking at the landscape today, maybe there needs to be more tax relief for small businesses so we can reinvest in our communities and reinvest in people, hire more employees, and be prepared for recovery. So we know the pandemic's going to pass. We don't know when, but we need to be prepared to hit the ground running. And, it's hard to do that when you can't really see what lies ahead.
Yeah. So do you feel that it is appropriate for state or local governments to offer incentives to private businesses in consideration of locating, expanding, or conducting business in a particular part of the state?
My background as a politician, I know a lot of elected officials don't want to call themselves politicians, but we are. That's what we are. And I've been an elected official since 2000 or 1999. I was elected to LaGrange Town Council in Lenoir County, and then 3 years later I was elected as a county commissioner. So I served as a county commissioner here in Lenoir County for 8 years. And during that time, we were in a depressed economy. I mean, tobacco and textiles ran this county for the most part. Farming was big, but we had government jobs, tobacco, textiles, and then other agriculture. Incentives have helped small rural communities like Lenoir County and like those in North Carolina. I'm like most, I guess most conservatives. I don't really like incentives, but they're necessary to compete in today's society and in today's economy. The tier system gets a lot of flack from my friends in the metropolitan areas, and I understand that. I don't think large cities need incentives like Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham. Those communities don't need incentives like rural North Carolina does. We're one state, we're one economy. No matter how you slice it, we're all on the same team. And if rural North Carolina goes away or goes by the wayside, then the entire state will suffer. So I think they're a necessary evil to answer the question without going all around the world to explain it. So.
No, that's great. Describe your personal opinion as to what the key principles of free enterprise are.
Well, you know, I had to go back to my social studies book and just kind of refresh my memory.
Old school.
Yeah, you know, we're Schoolhouse Rock when you need it. But yeah, you know, the key principles, and I may not know them right off the top of my head, but I know they're the freedom to conduct business or to operate and run your business is important. I mean, you know, we have small businesses that open up every day, and there are entrepreneurs in this state, in this country, that had they not had the ability to start a business without a lot of impediments, not a lot of red tape, we wouldn't be in the shape we normally would see without a pandemic today. I mean, our economy has been robust for so long, and you know, having the free enterprise system allows a regular guy like me or those who grow up in economically depressed areas, low income neighborhoods. I mean, there's some of the sharpest minds that find ways to provide for their family, do better for themselves, to get out of you know, that economic status that they grew up in, maybe not by their own fault. But I think that the freedom to start a business has to always be a key principle that we embrace. You know, a lot of folks think making a large profit is greed, corporate greed, and that sort of thing, you know, but I think it's what you do with your profit that defines you as a small business, as a company. I mean, do you give back your time to your community? Do you give back, give to charity? Do you help just make your local town or city or county a better place to live, attend church, to raise your family, and those sort of things. So I think that, you know, there's just so many good things that come from making. I mean, you can't survive if you don't make a profit. Okay. Another free enterprise system also incorporates the use of private property. You know, we've been going through some changes in rural North Carolina about you know, what we can or can't do with our property. The planning process is important, and I think that, you know, as long as my property doesn't affect the value of your property, I should be able to do mostly what I want to do with it without affecting those around me. So, you know, the owning property in this country today it's a big thing. I mean, it is good for mental health. It's an ego boost. I don't know what it is, but the right to own property and to do with it, to make a profit or to live on freely and to use, you know, in a smart and efficient way. I mean, I think it's important. You know, and I think consumers should have the right to go wherever they want to go and buy whatever they want to buy within the law, obviously. We do have laws for a reason. So I think that having that freedom from a consumer standpoint to buy goods online or in a local store are important, and to impede those rights can cause economic hardship. But we've just got to be smart about everything we do. There are laws in place to help protect our individual freedoms and those of others. And, so I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for this next question, you're in a very interesting position, and in your frame of reference really helps sort of, you look at this question or the answer to this question very differently with pre-COVID and post-COVID and working with the federal government, and also this in the state government trying to coordinate. But in your opinion, what is the appropriate balance in the scope of federal and state regulatory requirements on business? And what, in your opinion, is the best way to balance the appropriate protections without impugning economic vitality?
Yeah, that's a mouthful there. Well, I think given all the noise we're hearing about the pandemic, it's hard to filter out the truths and the untruths, and it's hard to know what to believe, what not to believe. Do we need the medical community running our economy? I don't think so. But do we need to listen to the medical community to make sure that our economy can prosper and get back on its feet? I think so. There's a fine balance between listening to economists and to the medical experts, to the mental health folks, and there's just a whole lot going on. I mean, I think we've got to have leaders who will make good, sound decisions based on science and data. I mean, I hear that a lot, but you've got to look at the other outliers, the mental health aspect, the economic health aspect, because if we all catch COVID and die, then there's no need for an economy. But the fact is, not all of us are going to catch it and die. So we've got to make sure those most vulnerable are protected. They help themselves receive the guidance and the help that they need. But those who are less vulnerable don't need to be quarantined. They need to be educated, but they don't need to be set aside and cast aside and locked up in their homes so they can't keep productivity moving on. Because if we stop everything right now, it's really going to be a bad day for this country. So I'm glad to see that many states around us are opening up, and I know the number of new cases are growing, and that's a concern. But we're testing more. That's probably a natural progression. But we've got to look at the hospital beds and make sure that those don't get overwhelmed. So there's just a lot of, I think there's a lot of things to consider. We've got to include our economic experts in this discussion. I think we've all but left them out, and the business community is over here wondering what's going on. Especially in North Carolina, we've got some bureaucrats making the decisions for this state, and the business community, is it being counseled or to make these decisions? It's all based on science and data. There's got to be a level playing field, and more people need to be included in those decisions.
So in this particular circumstance, and this is just a follow-up question, in this particular circumstance with COVID-19, are you seeing the tension between the regulatory requirements and economic growth, or economic vitality, to use a word that was used once before?
Yeah, there's some frustration. I mean, there are some frustration, and I guess when you have an executive branch that's one party and the legislative branch another party, and maybe maybe the dialogue is not there. And, you know, we live in a very tense day and age now with the George Floyd situation. I mean, everybody's tensions are high. And it's almost like every decision anybody makes, whether it's the governor, the Speaker of the House, the President pro tempore of the Senate, any public statement they make just flares up some emotions in everyone. All you got to do is look at Twitter, right? And there's just an extra added layer of emotion right now. So every decision that's being made is amplified. And I think sometimes that cooler heads aren't prevailing. It's almost like the leaders need to get in a room and hash it out and say, look, let's forget about party affiliation, ideological differences. Let's come together and figure out a way to make this state move forward and begin the healing process. So it's a fine balance. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. So Representative, if you are reelected in the fall, what would be your top 3 priorities as it pertains to the business community?
Well, we've got to continue to make North Carolina one of the most attractive states in the country. And obviously our population has seen significant growth in the last 20 years. We've got to make the business climate, or keep the business climate where it is. I mean, we just lowered taxes in our recent legislation. So we want to make sure that companies feel comfortable coming here. There's a great quality of life. So I think keeping our corporate taxes low are important. That'll happen with a conservative General Assembly. You know, there's a push to raise taxes to pay for Medicaid expansion. And, you know, as we've seen in other states, there's a big deficit in those states that have expanded Medicaid. So, but we've got to continue to find ways to help keep our people healthy, and we understand that. But we just don't think that Medicaid expansion is the only way to do that. You know, I'd like to see North Carolina, I'd like to see us pass more bipartisan legislation. You know, given this day and age, like I mentioned before, I mean, we've got to find common areas we can work together to make North Carolina and keep North Carolina attractive. We passed bipartisan legislation. I mean, almost 80% of the time, I don't know what the exact number is, but I know in the last 2 weeks, we've had a few controversial issues, but not very many. Most of our legislation has been unanimous. I mean, we passed the Second Chance Act to give, you know, those offenders another chance to be productive citizens. And I think that helps the economy in North Carolina. You know, but we've just got to find ways to keep North Carolina attractive. A third leg is, you know, education. Our education system continues to be under fire. I think we need to properly fund education. I think the bond that we've just passed in the House, or that we will pass, I think maybe this evening, the transportation education bond will help community colleges, the UC system, K through 12 schools pick up where we left off. We passed a bond a few years ago, and that, you know, plug some holes and fix some old buildings. And so we hope this will help with that and expand some areas that North Carolina is really good at in the entrepreneurial field, the business school at there's some items up at Elizabeth City State, the produce medicine at East Carolina, and there's a whole lot of good stuff in that bond. So I think those would be my key areas, you know, to try to focus on.
Well, thank you. This has been really great. I've enjoyed our conversation. We went a little bit off book, and I think that was great. So thank you so much for your time. Where can our members go to learn more about you? Well, Anna, my website is chrisfornc.com.
I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, so I'm not hard to find. My office in Raleigh is staffed with a great legislative assistant. The number there is 919-733-5995. And we try to be responsive. We're proud to represent Lenoir and Pitt counties. And, so just looking forward to a productive short session, an interesting election year, and hopefully the folks, my constituents, will send me back to Raleigh to help continue what little bit of progress we've made as a freshman. Not a whole lot you can do. I'm freshman majority whip for the Republican caucus. So it's been an honor to serve and work with my Democratic colleagues. There's good people in the General Assembly, and I'm blessed to be there. I'm honored to be there, and we just want to help folks any way we can, especially with these unemployment challenges. We didn't get about that now, but we've helped a ton of people with their challenges. So thanks again for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for your time, and good luck on the campaign trail.
Thanks a bunch. See you soon.
Okay.